Welcome to the Money Mile Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Waller, and we are happy you are here. We think of Money Mile as standing at the corner of triathlon and personal finance. We believe that age group triathletes are the lifeblood of our sport, and we like shining the light on some good people doing great things in our sport. Today, we are going to have our Questions on Course segment and a new guest to the show, Diana Hassel, an accomplished triathlete with 27 years of experience in the sport. Stick around to hear more about Diana's triathlon accomplishments, how she continues to be successful after almost 3 decades in the sport, and how she's been able to balance a thriving and successful career with a successful triathlon hobby after we discuss our Questions on Course. Please keep in mind that these are for educational purposes only and not financial advice about your individual situation. Here is the question for today. What types of items are deductible for businesses? This person happens to be a triathlon coach, so I will be talking directly to that type of business model today, but the concepts are going to be pretty similar. There are lots of things that can be deductible for business purposes, but we should talk about framing this conversation first. When we talk about business deductions, we first need to start with how business income is taxed. If you have a business, there can be several ways to set up your business that can change the taxation structure. This is not going to be a dissertation on everything, but there are a couple of key things that you need to think of first. The most common business type is a sole proprietorship. This is just you individually operating a business. In this structure, you file all the financials on your personal income tax return on a Schedule C, C as in Charlie. It's pretty straightforward, and I have included a link in the show notes to the Schedule C on the IRS website. The nice thing about this form is that if you look at the tax form, it breaks down all of your deductible expense categories. For example, advertising to wages. Each of the categories here can have its own set of rules, but for the most part, if you have a reasonable and normal business expense incurred in the interest of you running your business, you can find a way to deduct it. If it fits easily into one of these categories, you should be good to go. Where a lot of the nuance comes in is how you structure and align the deductions. For example, as a triathlon coach, you are going to have travel expenses if you're the type of coach that visits your athletes or goes to races to promote your coaching services. Where this gets a little sticky is that if you are racing that race, are you advertising your business because it has your coaching service logo on it, or are you just racing? If you are racing personally, that is not deductible. But if you are advertising, a case could be made that you are trying to find new clients by getting your name out there, talking with other athletes, etc. Normal and reasonable is the next nuance I want to dig in on. Again, I'm not a CPA and I'm not going to defend you in front of a tax court, so please consult your tax preparer if you have questions on any of this or if you are dancing in the gray areas here. What I mean by gray area is that if you are the type of coach that needs to have a truck to haul training equipment around and you structure things correctly, you might be able to deduct the cost of the truck against your income. If your business generates $1,000 per year of income and you buy and try to deduct a brand new truck that costs $90,000, this could be considered an unreasonable expense. Outside of just being a bad idea financially, this could also come back to bite you at some point. Every true business is being run in the interest of making a profit. If you are acting accordingly and truly trying to make a profit, you should be fine. Not every business is going to be profitable every year, and that's okay. You have to be careful here and know that if you are not really acting as a business and trying to make money, and you are really operating as a hobby and trying to avoid taxes, the IRS can disallow any of your deductions. Ultimately, if you would not feel comfortable standing in front of a judge and answering questions about the deductions you are taking, I wouldn't suggest you take them. On your Schedule C, there are 21 line items for deducting with some subsections. I suggest that most small business owners should consider setting up their business accounting with these categories in mind. I won't bore you by reading the 21 line items, but when you get home after your run, you should check out the Schedule C on the 1040, which is a bit of a tangent here, but if you are operating as a business, you should have a separate banking account to make your life and accounting easier. A business checkbook and debit card will allow you to categorize all of your business expenses more easily than trying to extract your business expenses from your personal expenses at the end of the year. that can be a mess. And I pretty much promise you that you're going to miss some things if you try to run a business out of your household banking structure. But back to my point. If you have a business account and you can categorize all of your expenses based on the line items on your Schedule C, your tax return is going to be relatively simple. The Schedule C starts at the top with your income, say $100,000. You subtract all of your expenses, say $25,000 total, and your net profit is what you pay taxes on, $75,000 in this example. As a sole proprietor, there are other taxes you are going to need to be aware of, like self-employment taxes. This is your way of paying into Social Security and Medicare on the business profits, but this will get you most of the way there. Once you start a legitimate business, if you do not feel comfortable preparing your own business income tax return, it will be helpful for you to retain the services of a qualified tax professional to help with this. There are lots of nuances within the individual line items, and you want to make sure that you're doing this correctly. There are lots of other things that can be considered when you are running a business, things like business entity structure and liability. But I think that this is way beyond the scope of the question we received today. There are lots of other things that can be considered when you are running a business entity structure and liability, etc. I think it's a bit beyond the scope of the question we received today to really dive in on it, but as a quick note, if the business you are operating has the risk of hurting someone or someone could get hurt in the general operations of your business, I strongly recommend you consider establishing some sort of liability protection, either a business entity or purchasing additional insurance. You need to do something just in case your business gets sued that it doesn't completely wreck shop on your personal finances. If you'd like for me to talk more about business entity structures, S-corps to limited liability companies or something like that, please let me know. I'm happy to dig in on that. But I hope all of this was valuable for you. And now let's turn our attention to Diana Hassel. Diana is a professor of equine emergency surgery and critical care at Colorado State University, where she's worked for the past 20 years. She is also a 25-time Ironman finisher with 14 age group podiums at Ironman Hawaii. Diana, welcome to Money Mile.
Thank you, Justin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Diana, if we are doing this correctly, our listeners are out somewhere on a long, steady run. So we'll put links in the show notes so all of our listeners can catch up and connect with you when they're done with their run. Is that okay with you?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Excellent. Maybe you could just start us off and tell us a little bit about how you got started with triathlons.
I think it was back in 1997. So I was just finishing up my surgical residency in equine surgery at UC Davis. And I was involved with master swimming at this local club, the Davis Athletic Club. Just got to know a lot of really great people who happened to be triathletes. And so ended up getting a bike and joining the running club. And next thing I knew, I was in a sprint triathlon in the fall of 1997 called the Golden State Triathlon. Completely had no idea about the brick thing. And so just went as hard as I could, just about died on the little 5K run and loved it, just absolutely loved it and was completely hooked from then on and never stopped.
That is wonderful. So having done that race myself a couple of times, I can appreciate the appeal of that, but it's nice to know that that was the initial triathlon that got you hooked into things. I have found that over time, things change a little bit. So when you're looking at your career, at your triathlon career at this point, I know that success means different things to different people. How are you defining success in triathlon these days?
Well, I've always kind of lived my life setting goals for myself, and sometimes they're little minor goals. Sometimes they're daily goals. Like I always want to learn something new every day, and that's why I love my career and I love coaching as well. But a big goal I set as a 12-year-old, I know, was to become a veterinarian, equine veterinarian in particular. And every little kid wants to be a vet, right? I set that goal early in life and it worked out. And my brother actually bet against me at that time. He said, "You're never going to be a vet. I'll bet you $100 you won't be a vet." And so I said, "You're on." And he ended up paying me when I was in vet school about 10 years later. So that was kind of the start of my kind of goal setting mentality. And it's never stopped. And it applies to every race and everything I do in daily life. And so yeah, that's success for me is kind of achieving the goals I set for myself.
Nice to see that that trend started early on in your life. Started at the ripe age of 12. Do you still rub your brother's nose in that at all? The first $100 that he lost, or is that water under the bridge, as it were?
It's water under the bridge. He's a great brother. In fact, he came to support me in Hawaii and became a triathlete and an Ironman triathlete himself after coming to watch me race. So we get along great. And he lives in Colorado now too. And so we just went climbing yesterday at the climbing gym. So
That is wonderful. And it's nice that you have such a strong relationship with your sibling there, and that he's also picked up a fun hobby as well. I'm assuming he's at a hobby level as well, and he is not a professional. Is that accurate?
correct. Yeah. He's 5 years older than I am, which makes him pretty old.
We don't have to get into specific numbers here. So thank you. I appreciate that. We can just leave it at that. We have also found that triathlon is an expensive hobby, or it can be. So, what tips or suggestions might you have for other triathletes that are trying to get the best bang for their buck?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's can be an extremely expensive hobby, and I would say it is for me because I'm always trying to get those little marginal gains with the best equipment possible. But I would say that the very best idea I'd have for people who are just getting into the sport and don't want to or don't have the means to spend a lot of money is to join a triathlon community that's local. There's always one available. Even if you're online, but most communities will have a really welcoming group of people that are interested in triathlon. And so getting to know those people and starting to work with them in a group, and you'll get opportunities that wouldn't come your way normally. An example would be I often give away a lot of equipment that I've replaced with new stuff, and I don't want to bother trying to sell it. So so I give it to local triathletes that I may or may not know. I know it's helping them out and may not have the income to buy some of these things. So things like that I think are really helpful. It's good practice. Just get involved, get to know people, get to be part of a community, and things will come your way at probably much lower prices than they should.
I think that's a great point, and one we haven't talked about before here, I don't think, especially for someone just getting started. When you say, "Oh, hey, I'm going to go do this race, and I need somebody recommends you buy race wheels," that can be kind of daunting at the first time. But I know there are lots of cases in our local tri club where it's like, "Hey, somebody's doing the race, and like I need to get my hands on some race wheels." People in the club will raise their hands like, "Oh, I've got between the club, we've got 3 different sets you can borrow. What are you looking for? What size of rims are you trying to do?"
Exactly.
Wow. Rather than spend $1,000+ on your own, hey, start by borrowing stuff for your friends, and that's okay. I love the idea of kind of paying it forward. So once you've replaced something, like, hey, great, you can pass that along. I'm not really great with selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace or whatever else either. I usually look for people that could benefit from it. So I'm in a similar spot as you. So that's great input. You also have completed the Boulder 70.3 race earlier this year, finishing first in your age group. So congratulations on a great race.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you trained for this race and how you were able to execute so well on race day and how you felt when you crossed the finish line?
It's been a kind of an interesting year. Actually, that particular race, I felt pretty unprepared because I hurt my knee early on in the year. So like February or March, I fractured it, but I didn't know at the time. So I just been kind of, nursing myself along. And so I wasn't sure I was ready for this race. And I've done Boulder, I don't know how many times, probably 14, 15 times. It's one of my staple races. So I just figured I know the terrain really well. I know the race. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So when I had such a good outcome, I was ecstatic. I used the TriDot platform for training. Actually, this whole year I used that for the most part. Wasn't able to follow it to a T like I would like to because of dealing with my knee, but it definitely was helpful. Yeah, so I think little other things that I do, generally hadn't hurt. My knee was cooperative on the bike, so I did a lot of bike racing, some gravel racing, and things like that. That fitness kind of carried me through despite not having the run fitness that I was hoping for. But I was really happy. Yeah, it was great.
Congratulations again. Was this the first time you finished top of the podium at that race?
No, I've done it many, many times in the past.
You
Yeah.
mentioned you've done the race before, and an
Yeah.
athlete of your caliber, I thought, this might be familiar territory for you. So you also raced in the Longmont Gravel Race in October of 2024 there in Boulder. So finishing first in your age group there and fourth overall. So you are quite an athlete on many fronts. Can you explain to our listeners a little bit of the importance from your perspective or why it's fun competing in other disciplines outside of triathlon?
Well, I learned this pretty early on. So back I did when I was doing my PhD at UC Davis after my residency, I joined a cycling team at UC Davis. So the collegiate cycling team. I was on probably the oldest person on the cycling team. But I found that this is a massive boost for my triathlon skills and triathlon training. And I loved it. I loved them both, but my number one love was triathlon. But I have been racing bikes since 2000, I think, as a Cat 2 racer. And I think that's always been helpful. And when I started early on and I was younger, in my early 30s, this took me to a level where I was literally racing with the pro women in many of the mass start races in terms of the bike splits. And nowadays, not so much. Plus, you add 25 years to my age, that doesn't help. But it does still help quite a bit. Running races are the same. I think they really can boost your running fitness. They're just like it's also a fun way to boost your fitness too, right? So there's a lot of good community around these things and it's a lot of fun. And you just can't achieve those levels of intensity, I think, sometimes when you're training by yourself. Throwing in a race here and there in other disciplines, same with swimming. I'll do master swimming races on occasion as well. It just makes it more fun and it boosts your fitness. It gets you faster. So I highly recommend it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, you have also had multiple podium finishes at Ironman 70.3 distance in the last 15 to 16 years. Is there anything in particular that you would credit for longevity as a triathlete outside of the working with the cycling specific stuff and the master swim? Is there anything that you would focus on to improve the longevity for triathlon?
Yeah, I think there's probably two things I think that are the most critical, and one would be consistency. And that I think is the hardest thing for most people. I've coached many people throughout over the years, and the ones that are consistent, so the ones that just, they keep going, they don't have these huge blocks of time that they just completely take off multiple times throughout the year. Those are the ones that are going to be most successful over time and really get the most out of themselves and their best possible performances. And then the other big thing is really learning how to listen to your body and identify a problem before it becomes something more significant and deal with it as quickly as possible rather than just letting it keep on going, driving through and saying, oh, the pain's not that bad, and that type of thing. So really staying injury free, basically by listening to your body and addressing things super early before they become big problems and chronic problems, I think is really key.
That's excellent. You mentioned before that you are also coaching and you are currently an Ironman U coach and a TriDoc coach. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the coaching side of things?
It actually just started by some friends asking me to coach them because of my success in Ironman and in the 70.3s. And they were interested in doing an Ironman. So they asked me to help guide them. And I said, sure, yeah, I'll give it a try. And I have with my professional background, I have a lot of just physiology, anatomy, knowledge of sport as well, because I've always followed that as well as my veterinary side of things, just for my own benefits and just trying to optimize my own performance. And so I did that for many, many years. And then when Ironman U came out with a training program for certification of coaches, that really piqued my interest. So I did that, got trained in that right away. And I really enjoyed that. And the program has really advanced to a very high level at this point, especially in the last year or so. They've really stepped it up. So I've enjoyed that. And they've added the TriDoc platform as well, which is really an AI-based training platform, which I think can be extremely helpful if you have that mindset and the consistency to really follow it closely. If you don't and you tweak things a lot, I think you can still benefit from it. but I think those athletes might do better with, more personalized training that you just develop on a weekly basis as well. So I do both. I offer both as a coach now. And I just found I've really enjoyed it. It's so rewarding to work with these individuals, get to know them, the ones especially that I've had an opportunity to work with through TriAthletes, where I can really dive in a little more deeply, swimming, running, form perspective, and all the nutritional aspects and mental training, things like that. Those really help build a relationship even more deeply than just like creating workouts on a weekly basis. So I just really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun. It's so fun to see people really achieve their potential in racing, and it's something that I plan to continue to do and probably expand on in the future now that I have a little more time on my hands.
That's wonderful. And I'm really glad to hear that you found success and continue to enjoy the coaching side of things. You mentioned that you might have a little bit more free time on your hands. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, so after 20 years at Colorado State University, I've gone into more of a transitional retirement. So I'm working about 40% time at CSU now, and the remainder of the time, I now have a little more flexibility, so I can go on bike rides on the weekdays when there's less cars, do group rides and things like that, which I really had difficulty doing in the past. And so that's giving me the opportunity to focus a little bit more on the triathlon side of things, both from my own training perspective and also for my athletes. And so it's a lot of fun. I'm hoping to continue to build on my triathlon coaching moving on from here.
Thank you for being part of the Money Mile community. As a valued listener of the Money Mile podcast, we want to hear from you. We are constantly working to improve our content to be more engaging and relevant to your fitness and finance journey. Whether you're a triathlete, a fitness enthusiast, or just looking forward to being an active retiree, or all of the above, your opinion matters to us. We've put together a quick survey to gather your thoughts on the podcast, what you love, and what we can improve on. The link to our survey will be in the show notes for newer episodes and will also be available in the Money for the Long Run newsletter. If you are not receiving the newsletter, please check out wallerfc.com and scroll to the bottom of the site to sign up for the newsletter. The survey will only take a few minutes, and as a thank you for sharing your insights, you will be entered to win a Garmin Forerunner 965 Premium watch. This is the perfect companion for tracking your triathlon training, fitness goals, and more. Why should someone consider taking this survey? To help us create content that you love, to shape the future of Money Mile, and also to get a chance to win an amazing Garmin watch worth almost $600. Stay tuned and we'll announce the winner on the podcast soon. Don't miss your chance to have a say in the future of Money Mile and grab the chance to score an incredible Garmin watch as a thank you. We can't wait to hear what you think. Thank you for being part of the Money Mile community, and we'll let you get back to the rest of this episode. What would you consider to be the most underrated aspect of triathlons, or something you think that more triathletes should know about?
I guess I would start with saying that I can't think of anybody who has ever done a triathlon race that did not love the experience. And so the biggest thing I think that people recognize right off the bat is the sense of community that comes along with this sport. And I think that's something that really draws people to it and gets people almost addicted to it. It's a key thing to note, though, that if you do get addicted to it, you got to make sure to put the most important things first. So remember, this is a hobby for most people. It's not a career. It's not like a means of survival or anything like that. It's something we do for fun. And so always prioritizing things that are most important, I think, is important to remember too. Like family, for instance, would be number one for me.
Maintaining that perspective over time, I would agree, is very important. At this point, obviously, you have a lot of experience in the triathlon world. And I'm curious, from your perspective, who do you admire most in the sport today?
Well, that's an easy question for me because it's one of my very best friends, and her name is Cherie Gruenfeld. She's, I think, 15-time world champion now. Ironman and 70.3 distance. I think she's 81 this year. What's so amazing about Cherie is so it's not just her physical abilities and ability to compete at this highest level through decades. I think she got started in maybe in her 40s, so she got a late start. Started with marathons and went into Ironman. But it's what she does with the rest of her life that's so impressive. So she really puts her heart into her nonprofit, Exceeding Expectations, which is where she takes these underprivileged kids, little kids starting at, 4, 5, 6 years old. They're destined kind of to go into gangs and to fail and to not go to college in the situations that they're in. And she motivates them to succeed in life and uses triathlon as a kind of a mechanism as to do that and to learning work ethic. But she focuses on education as the number one thing. And she promises these kids she will take them through college if they stick with it. And she does it. She's had so many kids graduate from college. They all come back because they're so grateful to her and her husband Lee too for what they've done for them and how they've changed their lives. And it's just she's my inspiration, I would say. Yeah.
Wow, she sounds like an amazing person. Hopefully, one of these days, I would love to chat with her. She sounds like she has some tremendous experience there. And I'd love to hear more about the Exceeding Expectations work that she does through her nonprofit.
You should interview her. She would love that.
I will look forward to that conversation. All I need is an introduction, Diana. So hopefully you can help us out there. So
Will do.
now you're still actively racing and doing all this stuff, and I know it has been a while since we sent out our initial data gathering form. We had asked what your A race was for the year. So can you tell us what your A race is moving forward?
This might be one of the first years I may not go to a world championship event because I want to take a little break from Kona. And I'm kind of waiting until I hit the next age group, I think, to try and do my last Kona because my last one was going to be my last Kona because I just feel like I'm getting older. It's getting harder and I'm not as tough as Cherie. But
I don't think any of us are. I
yeah,
really don't, but
yeah.
please.
But I ended up getting sick with some food poisoning the week of the race, and I was the fittest I'd been, and I was very excited. I went ahead and started, even though I had a fever until like 1:30 the race morning. And then I woke up feeling pretty good. So I went ahead and raced, but I kind of ran out of energy after about 4 hours, and I knew this wasn't my day. So I would like to go back again, but I would like to go back when I'm 60. So I'm going to wait a couple more years. So this year, I already have 3 races I'm doing. So those are kind of all going to be kind of A races for me. My first being the Hawaii 70.3. And then I'll probably go back to Boulder because I always go there. And then I'm going to a race in Michigan, that one near Traverse City. So that'll be a new race for me. And so those are my 3 big triathlons. And I want to do well in my gravel racing as well. So kind of got some A races there. The Steamboat Gravel Race, this big one I'm aiming for as well. So, and then we'll see. I may or may not go to Spain. We'll see. I go to Spain every spring for bike riding. So it'd be a double Spain trip. So I'm not sure with my new retirement income if I want to do 2 of those this
Well,
year.
I don't know. We ramp up this coaching income, and you'll have more discretionary funds for to keep your hobby fun going.
I'll just have to listen to your financial advice. Yeah.
But it sounds like you have quite a year ahead. I'm a big fan of the Hawaii race. The one that I wanted to circle back to was the Steamboat Gravel Race. I've heard good things about that. I'm curious from your perspective if there are any like particular highlights or things like, oh, you should absolutely do that race because of whatever. Is there anything that stands out for you for Steamboat?
The thing that stood out for me, and this is kind of a personal thing for me, is it's close enough to where I live. So it's about maybe a 3-hour drive. And so the community there, I have so many friends that go up there. They're either doing the race or they're going to go and watch and do a ride during the race. And so we end up having this huge fun party, and it's just a lot of fun. The race itself is very well run. It's really beautiful, and I couldn't believe I think I won my age group in there last year, which was the first time I did it. But it's not a cheap race. It's like $275 just for the 50 mile, which is the one I did. And so not inexpensive, but worthwhile for me just for the whole experience because we make it a whole weekend of it.
Well, maybe one of these days. I'm not as strong. It sounds like I'm not as strong a cyclist as you are, but I do thoroughly enjoy a gravel ride. So maybe one of these days I'll get out and check out that steamboat race. Related to the financial side of things, one of the questions we often ask here is if you had $100 to spend on any triathlon gear, what would you buy?
I think for me, I think something that's really important is an arrow bottle. A lot of people, use a variety of different mechanisms to provide hydration, but for me, the arrow bottle, I think, is critical for a few reasons. One, it's fairly aerodynamic, maybe not as much as some other setups, but it's pretty good for that. But it allows you to really stay consistent with your intake of fluids. And hopefully you may or may not have some calories in there, but most definitely would have some electrolytes of some sort in most situations. And so it really helps you to stay on top of your nutrition while being able to maintain an aero position, which also is of value when you're trying to optimize your performance. So I would probably pick that as a key thing to have on your bike. Of course, you need aero bars if you have an aero bottle. So
I asked that question that way on purpose because if we asked, if you only had $10,000 to spend, what would you do? Like, the sky's the limit. But it's kind of boiling it down to what if you only were looking for one incremental piece, and not every triathlete is financially independent or has their own stockpile of resources they can draw from, but you can make a meaningful improvement in your setup with $100. If it's buying aero bars or whatever it might be, aero bars, aero bottle, kind of working through that side of things can be a meaningful improvement. Although, as you were describing that, I did reflect back on I've been known on one or two occasions to actually take that nutrition break as the opportunity to give my back a little rest or whatever. As much as I would like to be more aero, I will admit that I cheat on that from time to time. So we've covered a lot here, Diana, and I really appreciate your time. As we're wrapping things up here, what is it that you would most like the world to know about you and your journey in triathlon?
I would say probably the most important thing is that it is possible to have a productive and thriving career and also have a really successful triathlon hobby. It's possible to balance all those things. And the triathlon piece to me is kind of like the whole balance in life. Getting in those workouts can be super beneficial for stress relief and anything that might be more work related where just need a break from that. And I'm super grateful for the opportunity to move on from my current role now as a full-time professor to a part-time professor and to expand my triathlon coaching now because that's a kind of a new chapter for me. So I think, yeah, the key thing is you definitely can do it even if you're super busy because I was working 60 to 80 hour weeks most weeks throughout the last 25, 30 years. So
And it can be done. And I would also appreciate if you could tell the Money Mile community a little bit more about how to find you and how would they best connect with you to learn more about the coaching work that you're doing and the other pieces that you have going on in your world.
thank you for asking that. I just literally just opened a website a few days ago because I really all of this has always been just a hobby that I've done in terms of my coaching is I always limited myself to three athletes for the most part, except occasionally, but over the last 20 years or so because of my work requirements and then also trying to train while working. So yeah, so I've created a website called Hassel-Free Triathlon Training.com. Yeah, I just created it for the first time on Squarespace. I've never made a website, so forgive me if it's pathetic, but it's a start. And so that would probably be the easiest way to reach me. There's a contact me on there. So yeah, I appreciate you asking about that. Thanks.
If any of the members of the Money Mile community happen to find themselves in a situation where they're considering a coach and looking for someone who has been there and done that and had a professional career as well as a very healthy and thriving triathlon hobby and still performing well at that, if anybody's looking to connect up with someone that has been there and done that and done well, I definitely recommend reach out, consider hassle-free coaching it's hassle-free training.
Yeah, Hassel-Free Triathlon Training.
Hassel-Free Triathlon Training. I love the play on words. That's fantastic. So wonderful. Well, Diana Hassel, thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure getting to know you, and we will look forward to seeing good things out of your races this year and hopefully many more into the future. So good luck with everything ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I hope this episode of Money Mile was valuable for you. If it was, please share the podcast with your training buddies and friends. Keep in mind that if you work out, everything else will too, and we'll look forward to talking with you next time on Money Mile.